אשרי האיש אשר לא הלך בעצת רשעים ובדרך חטאים לא עמד ובמושב לצים לא ישב לא ישב כי אם בתורת השם חפצו ובתורתו יגה יומם ולילה והיה קץ שתול על פלגי מים שתול על פלגי מים שתול על פלגי מים ועלהו לא ייבול ועלהו לא ייבול וכל אשר יעשה וכל אשר יעשה יצליח לה 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 אשרי האיש אשר לא הלך בעצת רשעים ובדרך חטאים לא עמד ובמושב לצים לא ישב
Good evening, everybody. Hello, hello. It's very nice to see you. Hello to the people who have been to all classes. Hello to the people who are coming to this class for the first time. I hope it is going to be a helpful experience for all of us. And here comes Lydia. Good. The room is going to get populated, and yes, as you come in, the sound is muted, but please feel free to be on camera. In a class like this, we're a small enough group, and it's good for us to be able to see each other's faces. It is nice to see everybody. Are we holding up okay? We're here, aren't we? It's been quite a week. It has been quite a week. Let's see what we can do to direct our minds towards getting a little bit of a sense of control over our thoughts, and ideally being able to direct our energy towards not happiness as a goal, even though that's what it says in the title, but happierness, as Oprah Winfrey calls it. That getting happy is a process and not a product. It's a skill, and because it's a skill, we can learn it. And when we learn it, we can implement it into our lives. So welcome in. Let's very good, Irene. I like it. Excellent. All right, and with that, I like to share slides when I'm doing a class on Zoom. You should feel free to take photographs of the slides as you wish. And I just find that it holds our discussion a little more closely together. So welcome in. Welcome to class number 4 of the 4-class Finding Happiness series, but we recap as we go. Partly because that is good teaching practice, and partly because we are adults, and it is a truth of adult learning that we forget in between what it was that we learned last week. So we always recap. Let me begin with our teachers. So on the left is Arthur Brooks. It's by this point, it's quite hard for me not to call him Rabbi Arthur Brooks. He truly is a source of wisdom for me, and if nothing else from this course, I hope that I've begun to be able to introduce you to some of his ideas in a way that makes you think that perhaps you'd like to find out more. There are books, there are podcasts. He is the happiness columnist for the Atlantic magazine. And he's a true source of wisdom in our times. And you're reminding me that I should put out there that maybe we would like to dream about having him in conversation with Rabbi Brous on the second day of Rosh Hashanah. Maybe we would. Yes, if anybody knows him, they should let me know. The second picture is just a picture. This is an artist's rendition of the author of the book of Ecclesiastes, in Hebrew, Kohelet. It is a book that is devoted to the complexities of achieving both wisdom and happiness. It's a very contradictory book, Ecclesiastes. The author's soul is fighting with the voice inside himself that says everything is completely worthless, and the voice it's inside himself that says, and yet we can pursue wisdom, and yet there are times where we can be joyous, which is why the book of Ecclesiastes is read on Sukkot, which is the festival of our joy. And more about that towards the end of the session. So this is an artist's rendering. I like to think, because I like to think these things, that even though the biblical book itself claims that it's written in the persona of King Solomon, the word Kohelet in Hebrew is feminine. So I'm just going to plunk that out there and leave it there. That this might be, I like to think that this is a book that was written by a queen as well as, or instead of, a king. But that's just my personal take. I've not seen that reflected anywhere else, so that's my Michigas. So we have Arthur Brooks, we have Ecclesiastes, whoever they were, and also we have each other. Because one of the things that makes a community tick, and one of the things that we can truly offer each other, especially in this kind of work, in this kind of work that I call, along with my teacher Parker Palmer, and call it soul circle work, when we come together in order to seek wisdom, we are each other's sources of wisdom as well. And when sources of wisdom within a community are connected with each other, then the community becomes stronger. So that is part of the aim of these classes as well, that we discover each other as sources of wisdom. And so I hope it will be, and I hope that the connections that you have made in this class are going to continue beyond the class and into the room at IKAR, because that is what I would like to happen. Introductions. I can see that a couple of you have already begun. Please share your name and your location in the chat. Yep, just go ahead, and I'm waiting for the chat to populate with who you are and where you're coming in from. Thank you. We have some LA and we have some afar. This is the joy of a Zoom class. So please go ahead and yep. Both in Austin. Hello, Amy. It's nice to see you, friend. And Jen and Jeff from Manhattan Beach, and lovely. Lovely. So we are a nice mixture of people, and we are nice, we're coming in from a lot of places. This is good. It pleases me to know that IKAR has this kind of reach. The last class in the series of 4, they all go up on YouTube in answer to your question, Irene. So you can get not only the slides, you can get the whole classes to look at. There's normally a still on YouTube of me waving my arms around in some kind of configuration and grimacing. Somehow the camera always seems to catch me that way, but that's how you'll know that you're in the right place. For tonight's class, please have something to write on and or with. Because the wisdom that gets dropped in the class might be something that you want to preserve. Recordings of this class and of past classes are on the IKAR channel on YouTube. It normally takes a day or so to get classes up after they've been given, but they are all there. And just a reminder or an introduction that for tonight, for a Zoom class, I like to use multiple modalities for us to be able to access the wisdom of the teachers and each other's as well. So this is one modality. This is us in big group in the room with me putting up information on slides, but please chat. Please have the chat line open. I will stop periodically and I will scan through the chat line, see what's in it, and lift up and share points that need to be shared with the room. It's always good to have people talking in class, all right? So just like you would talk in the pews if you were in the room at IKAR, so too you should schmooze with each other while this learning is going down, okay? It's how we access each other's wisdom. I normally give us a personal journaling exercise of 5 to 10 minutes or so in the class, just to be able to collect our thoughts and to process what we've been learning. And I also break us out into breakout rooms. Part of the purpose of that is so that we get to know each other more deeply. And another part of it is for us to be able to exchange our wisdom in a less formal and less from the front way. So we're going to have a little bit of all of those as part of the class tonight. Our touchstones, the way that we do this work is just as important as the content. I would say actually almost more so in the days that we live in when it is so challenging to be in dialogue. So first, confidentiality. What is learned in the room stays in the room unless you have that person's permission to share their wisdom. I ask that you be present as fully as possible. I recognize that we all like to be behind our names and the black screen from time to time, but certainly I promise you that you are fit to be seen by the other participants in the class. And certainly when we're in breakout rooms together, I'll be inviting us to be off, to be showing our faces to each other in that way. It makes a difference. Speaking our truth in ways that respect others' truths and responding with questions is really about how we keep the dialogue flowing in the class. So there's a difference between saying, I'm curious about that. I have some experiences around that myself. Can you tell me more about your experiences? And saying, when that happened to me, I did this. One one is an invitation, one is a shutdown. We know what to do. I'm just reminding us. And in this room, in every room that I facilitate, actually, we don't fix each other, we don't save each other, we don't advise each other, we don't correct each other. It's possible to share our wisdom and pool our resources without doing any of those things. And the more respectful we keep our dialogue, the more open the currents of learning in the class. So thank you for that. It is a mitzvah to learn. It is a sacred obligation to become wiser. It's one of the things that human beings are here to do. And so I always like to dedicate our learning. We can dedicate for a happy reason, for a sad reason, to an individual, to a group of people. The idea is that the energetics of our learning goes out into the world and somehow makes it just a little bit better. And so I'm going to stop the share and I'm going to invite, if people have dedications, please unmute and dedicate, because that would be lovely. Whenever you're ready.
I'll dedicate this. We had a distant cousin, my father's first cousin, Milton Purcell. He passed away this past week. He was 89, but lived quite a good life, very intelligent guy, loved learning and had a beautiful family. So we'll dedicate that to him.
Wonderful. And his name was Milton?
Milton.
Lovely.
So I'm going to dedicate this to my cousin, Pennell, who is visiting me and is happy to be listening in, but is going to, when we break into small groups and we'll be she won't join into that, but she's anyway. So I wanted to dedicate it to a lifelong friendship.
Lovely. Welcome to town. Glad to have you here. Other dedications? Rachel, I see you.
I wrote it already. I dedicated this learning to my husband, Joel, because he's an intelligent, lovely human being. And he's been a very good lifelong learner. And I'm grateful that he includes me with all his curiosity.
That's wonderful. Lovely. Thank you. Mara.
Sorry.
There you are.
First of all, I'm sitting in my car. Sorry, because my internet is off in my apartment. I'm dedicating this for two things. One is to myself because I'm having an upcoming birthday this weekend, and may I continue to learn and gain more wisdom as each year comes.
Wonderful.
So that's that. Thank you. And then also for all the people in Israel and the world who are suffering and in pain, may they have healing.
Amen. 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 Jennifer, I see you, and then Reen.
I dedicate this to my mother, who's hiding.
I'm
going,
hello, Mom.
hello, Mom. Who is also a lifelong learner, very wise and intelligent.
And she has a name, I'm assuming.
Barbara. Sorry, Barbara.
Hi, Barbara. Welcome in. Good to have you here. Lovely. And Jennifer, very, very nice to see you. Who did I say? Irene?
Yeah, mostly I'm dedicating every scrap of happiness that can float along in the ether to our daughter Mihaly and her children, our grandchildren, after the dad moved out and they're trying to grab happiness where they can. Mm-hmm. The youngest one has turned dad's office into a painting studio and she's just throwing it all on canvas. The youngest one is just a ricochet rabbit. I can't get a handle on that one. And my oldest is just trying to keep the train going. And this child that used to wear kosher kids shirts and demand orange juice instead of milk in the lunch line. She's now a Wiccan pagan something, and she's leaning on absolutely nothing at the moment but her own grit, of which she has a lot.
That's
And
good to hear.
yeah, and I will remember
So-
both of my parents who were lifelong learners. Oh, she's Mihaly Athena Fauster at the moment.
Wonderful.
But my parents were lifelong learners, and because of them, I think their influences formed me. So Austin and Irene Phelps, they're whose house I live in. So there you go, even though they're gone.
Lovely. Thank you. Thank you, Reen. And Susan, we see you.
Yeah, I want to dedicate this learning to my friend from high school, good friend, Carol White, who just left LA after all these years. She lived her whole life, 70 years, 75 years, and moved to Oregon. But she's always been wanting me to be happy. So I'm dedicating this to her.
Wonderful. Brave lady.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Any more dedications? Lydia, yeah.
I'm gonna sound a little bit silly, but I'm dedicating this session to a horrible, challenging patient I had today who
Oh,
made me crave for this moment all
oh.
day long.
Amen, amen. There are people who say that adversity itself is a spiritual practice.
Yes.
We don't know what our tools are until we have to put them to work. So here we are, and may they find blessing, and may they find peace, and may their pain go away. All right, with that, we can dedicate. So please just read along with me in your spaces. Baruch atah
Baruch atah Adonai,
Eloheinu
Eloheinu
melech haolam,
haolam,
asher
asher kidshanu
Shanu b'mit
mitzvotav
Ivanu
asok b'divrei Torah.
Torah.
Lovely, lovely to engage, to get all wrapped up in words of Torah. That's what my teacher, Rabbi Dorf, says is going on here. So we can think of ourselves getting wrapped up in matters of wisdom and matters of insight. Okay, so with that, a quick summary of the journey so far. In session number 1, we did an exercise where we questioned all of the things that we think make us happy. We did what Brooks calls a reverse bucket list. And we discovered that there are some false equations about happiness and being happy that we carry around with us, and that maybe there is more to being happy than we might think, or we might know from our received intuition. In the second session, we took a step into the strategy by which we enter into the possibility of becoming happier. Brooks, Ecclesiastes calls that the search for wisdom. Arthur Brooks calls it metacognition. It's the same skill. It's the ability to detach from ourselves and our immediate situations and to moderate our emotions accordingly. And if, for those of you who were here, you will remember that we looked at the idea that we do actually have more control over our emotions than we think, or than the culture around us suggests, and we can choose our emotions. We are freer to choose our emotions than we might think that we were. And by altering that landscape inside ourselves, by re-establishing our agency over the space between our ears, we're able to gain greater detachment, and from greater detachment,
Now I
greater
could turn it off.
perspective. And from there to a greater possibility of being happy. We also looked at the idea that we can become happier by turning our energy outwards. Rachel, that was you, wasn't it? Run to do a mitzvah. Yeah, or your mom. Run to do a mitzvah. When we are embroiled and ruminating in our own thoughts, one way to arrest that process is to turn outwards and do something for somebody else. And then when we come back, we find ourselves less ensnared in our emotions, in our feelings, in our convictions, and by definition, more open to learning. Brooks and indeed Ecclesiastes, both of them present us with the challenge that the people closest to us are our greatest teachers and our greatest, or a great teachers and great sources of wisdom, even though they are far from perfect configurations. And we looked into what we can learn from and with our family constellation. Perhaps the most important one being the reminder to ourselves that family relationships do evolve. That even though when we are sitting at our parents' dinner tables or in the back seat of our parents' cars, we feel like we're 6 again, we are not actually 6, and they are not actually the age that they were when those patterns of behavior were laid down. So we give our family relationships permission to evolve. We looked lastly in the last session, and we shared wisdom about the building of lasting friendships. One of my favorite quotations from the book of Ecclesiastes about how 2 are greater than 1, and a threefold cord is not quickly broken. That by cultivating our friendships and by remembering something as simple as remembering to keep inputting into our friendships, that is one available route to becoming happier. When all of us think, as I was reflecting on last time's session, I was remembering what it was like during COVID, when somehow in all of that isolation, for many people, the focus came back to, I'm going to Zoom once a week to people with whom I last saw in my high school yearbook. I'm going to Zoom with college friends. I'm going to remind myself of the healing quality of friendship and the way that it evolves over time. And those 2, families and friendships, are 2 of the 4 subject areas in which we build what matters. So having discarded the I want to go on a cruise and the I need another pair of shoes and the I can't properly be happy until I've got that promotion and the I can't properly be happy until everybody in the room loves what I just said, when we set all of that aside and stand back, that's the metacognition piece, we free ourselves up to put energy into building things that have a greater potential to bring us lasting contentment. One of them is our families. I know that's challenging. We discussed that last week. One of them is our friendships. And the other 2 are work and faith. I want to say something obvious about both of these before we begin to dive into them. That work is bigger than job. In other words, we may have retired from what our working life was, but we are still beings of work. And that faith is bigger than religion. Whether we are observant or not observant, human beings are creatures of faith. We're hardwired for what is greater than ourselves. There's a part of our brain that is actually wired for that. And by exploring the invitations from that part of our brain, we are capable of generating greater happiness for ourselves. Everybody okay so far? Let me just stop the share and look at the chat. Hello, Sarah. We're glad you got back on. Ilan, yes, thank you. Thank you. Yes, and Irene is bringing in, there is a meditation strategy from Buddhism. We have a number of folks at IKAR who have come up through the joint traditions of Judaism and Buddhism. And the whole idea of metta meditation is that we begin with our wishes for ourselves and then we turn outwards. Another very important metacognitive skill that even though we start with what we are sitting with and what we are feeling, we turn the energy outwards to I see you, Irene, just a sec, to people who are our friends, and then out again to people who are not our friends, and then out again to encompass all beings, all sentient beings in the world. Irene, let me take your question and then we will move on. And
Just
Mari,
a quick comment. The instructions to start with ourselves, may I be free from danger, may I be physically happy, etc. Sometimes is difficult. And I had a teacher say, don't start there, because sometimes that is harder than the person that you hate. So start with those that you absolutely love, and then the friends, and then acquaintances. And at some point, insert yourself when you feel like you deserve it, which you do, but it's hard. So that was very freeing for me, because it was hard. I'd get stuck there going, yeah, oh, as if. So it was helpful.
thank you so much. And it endorses, doesn't it, the idea that we can interrupt the negative patterning by turning outwards, by being in community, as indeed we are by coming to class tonight. Let me state the obvious and lift it up, that we turn towards each other for greater wisdom. Okay, so let us begin to talk about the third one of those, which is work. And as I said, work is not necessarily what we do as a job, but as all the way through this course, the how we do is just as important, if not more important, than the what. So whether we are still engaged in the earning of our living out there in the big wide world, or whether we are dedicating ourselves to other forms of work, both of those count towards this building what matters. Yeah. So just drop into the chat if you would, please. Are you still engaged in earning a living work, or are you retired from work? Because I am interested to see. Let me stop the share and look at the chat. Thank you. Thank you, Rachel. Yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Both. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Lovely, lovely. Thank you, all of you. Okay, it's helpful to me to know the the landscape that this is landing in. Okay, my belief is that what he is saying about work applies whether it's our job or whether it is the work in the wider sense that we're doing in the world. Let me share a slide and explain a little bit about what I mean. I'm going to start with the negative. I like to start all of these little sections with a book from Kohelet. Here is how not to do it. I've mentioned, I think, that Kohelet is a contradictory book, and occasionally he has a good long moan about things. Being a wisdom teacher, it is odd and ironic, but somehow it feels very truthful that as we get towards the end of his book, which is only, or her book, which is only 12 chapters long, we find them, what was it you said, Irene? Very tired? Here it is, right here from 2000 years ago. No,
Look at the books behind me. You see why
yes, exactly. The making of many books is without limit, and much study is a wearying of the flesh. This is someone who studied for a living. Okay. A long time ago, when I was a college student, I knew someone who used this as the dedication for their PhD. Yeah. So here is the trap. Here is the work trap. How do we work? How do we bring ourselves to work in ways that are not going to wear us out, in ways that are not going to overwhelm us, and in ways that ensure that we can use the time that we are spending at work, which for those of us who are still employed is a walloping great chunk of our lives, that we can link that to the possibility of becoming happier. So proposition 1 is that work can be more satisfying. And the and that idea is that we can look in our very work that we might find so impossible and so tiring for paths to greater satisfaction. I'm going to read you a quotation. Okay, it's from one of Brooks's books. The trick is to join the physical labor to the metaphysical. This was the fundamental philosophy of the Spanish Catholic saint Jose Maria Escrivá. As he argued, through our work, we passionately love the world. Work is an expression of our love for the world. This is the quotation. God waits for us every day in the laboratory, in the operating theatre, in the army barracks, in the university chair, in the factory, in the workshop, in the fields, in the home, and in all the immense panorama of work. Understand this well. There is something holy, something divine hidden in the most ordinary situations, and it is up to each person to discover it. Let me read that sentence again. There is something holy, something divine hidden in the most ordinary situations, and it is up to each of us to discover it. Had Ecclesiastes been able to make that connection, then the studying would not have been a source of weariness. It would have become a source of inspiration. But when it comes to work, we have to begin with understanding ourselves. We have to begin with, and he deals with this at great length in the book that I hope all of you are immediately going to run out and buy and read after this short introductory course is finished. We have to begin with a knowing of what we find fulfilling. And for each of us, that will be different. For some of us, the fulfillment comes through interacting with written wisdom. For some of it, it comes through relationships, through dealing with people. For some of us, it comes through a feeling of service, a feeling of purpose, and so on and so on. The more that we can use our metacognitive skills to stand outside of ourselves and ask ourselves, what are the things that make me happy, the greater the possibility of being able to carry that into our life purpose. Rabbi Jonathan Sacks lifts up and teaches the idea that each of us is a letter in God's Torah. Each of us is here to fulfill a purpose. Part of our task as human beings is to discover what that purpose is, something that only we can do, and then put that purpose into practice. When we're able to make that connection, we begin to discover our work. And it's not a case of waking up in the morning and going, oh, I get it now. My calling is dum-de-dum-de-dum-de-dum-de-dum. We know that it's more complicated than that. We know that it involves kind of spiraling. We know that it involves a degree of repetition, and we know that not everybody follows the same career path. Some of us like to have a predictable path through the world. You know, what's the Gilbert and Sullivan? That you start by being the office boy or in the mailroom, and that gradually you work your way through gaining expertise as you go. That's what Brooke calls a linear career. It works for some people. It doesn't work for everybody. Yeah, the working girl idea where the boss's secretary becomes the head of the company. For some people, that is a fulfilling path, but just because it exists in the movies doesn't mean that it works for everyone. Some people do better in a state of steadiness, in a middle. Yeah, I know what it is that I want to be doing. I know what it is that the organization needs from me. I know what it is that are my gifts that I bring to the organization, and I want to stay here. That's not a linear career. That is, Brooks calls it steady state, but I would say if the linear one is vertical, you're climbing up the career ladder. The horizontal one is the garden, yeah, where you are sitting in the garden and you are making the garden bloom. And for some of us, that is the right shape for our working lives. And then you have the spiralers. You have the people like me, basically, the people who are, okay, I'm going to do that for a certain amount of time, and then I'm done with that spiral, I'm going to do this for a certain amount of time, where you're carrying forward skills from previous incarnations. Previous people are nodding, yeah, I think we might have some spiralers on the call. You carry through your skills from previous incarnations into whatever it is that you're going to do next. If I can get personal for a moment, a lot of the time, it really does not matter. It really is not relevant that I used to be a lawyer before I was a rabbi, except there are certain things that I learned from being a lawyer that are actually fairly useful when it comes to being a rabbi as well. Conversely, there are things that are of absolutely no use at all from that incarnation that deserve to be left behind. Yeah. So for some folks, it's a linear career path that brings fulfillment. For some folks, it's a steady state career path, the cultivating of the garden. And for some folks, it is a spiral career path. It's useful to know that about ourselves so that we can evaluate our working lives and our purpose accordingly. You can see, can't you, that if a spiral gets stuck in a garden, it's not going to work for them. If a garden gets forced into a linear trajectory, it's going to make us miserable. Yeah. So whether it is our work or whether it is our retirement, I am thinking as well that this works as a retirement patterning too. You know, here are the things I want to achieve in my retirement, linear. Here is what I want to contemplate in my retirement, steady state. I want to do this, and then when I'm bored with that, I want to do this. And when I'm bored with that, I want to do something else, spiral. Yeah, but knowing our patterns and knowing our rhythms gives us a greater chance in the world of our work of achieving happiness. So first of all, work does have the potential to be more satisfying, provided that we understand ourselves and we understand about ourselves the kind of career path that we're on. And then the third thing is that there are some rewards of work that are intrinsic and some that are extrinsic. We don't want to mix them up. Extrinsic rewards are we get paid for the work that we do. Yeah, if we're employed, we're getting paid for the work that we do. But that in itself is not fulfilling. You know, it's nice, it's vital that we make our living by our work, but the paycheck does not bring fulfillment. It is an extrinsic, it's an extrinsic success. Contrast the way that we feel when we earn something. The way that we feel when we get the positive feedback, when we get the recognition, when we have really worked to get to where we are, that we've worked through things. Yeah, that's an intrinsic reward of our working life. We have all been in situations where it's like, oh, for God's sake, why am I here? How is this my life? Yeah. But the skills that are called on for us to work through those stuck places are in fact a reward of our working life. Does that make sense? Yeah. Earned success is an intrinsic reward, an intrinsic reward. And Lydia, I'm going to lift up the dedication and the scenario that you brought, because it's just a really good example of how service to others is an intrinsic reward. You see what I mean? You're nodding. The person might not even be particularly grateful, but the fact that we have done something that is of service is an intrinsic reward. And being able to differentiate between, there's a difference between I got the promotion and I really learned something from that interaction. The promotion is extrinsic. The learning from the interaction is intrinsic, and the intrinsic rewards are the ones that are nourishing and bring us happiness, or bring us a greater chance of being happy. Let me pause for questions, thoughts, observations, all of the things. Or are we just processing what we just heard?
No, I agree I think this is a very important point. I agree with that concept of the intrinsic reward being really critical. Because I've been a doctor, and et cetera, but you know when you've done the right thing, or you know when you've worked on something and did it well. Uh, uh, that's really, I think, the stuff that sticks with you for sure.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. And that also means that work is one of the places where you can find greater happiness. Yeah. And it might be that you're sticking on stamps in the mailroom. But, well, nobody sits on stamps anymore, but you know what I mean. Yet that is of service to other people. Yeah. And you actually have all of these Hasidic stories about people like this, about the humble cobbler, about the innkeeper, about the who find their joy in the service. It's very important. Thank you. Irene, let me take one from you and then we'll go on because there's a little bit more to this work stuff.
Well, I backed into my career. I didn't mean to do it. I did a lot of very low pay, got to learn how people can't survive on minimum wage. Worked in a field picking flowers for a penny a flower, and learned what that life is like. So I understood serious poverty, so that when I went into nursing school accidentally, I understood when my spoiled, rotten classmates would say, "Oh, they could at least afford soap," and I said, "No, sometimes you can't afford soap." And that really helped. And then I backed into NICU. I was going to be a midwife, and NICU was a brand new field, and I just got caught up in it. So the intrinsic value of looking to those babies' eyes and helping the parents not be terrified throughout 45 years of incredible change. I don't know where it comes from now. That was so powerful, and so I can't even deny that, I saved babies' lives and I kept them alive to go home. And now I like, I'm making dinner for Amy and I'm working hard to unpack. Yeah, she likes my food. And I try very hard to get more stuff out of the house than keep. But to me, I'm not getting that hit. I'm not getting that hit. And you said a very long thing about in retirement after your career. Could you make that small enough for me to write down? Because I couldn't capture it.
I will try again, but let me get to there's one or two more things about work. Yeah. I will say, it does seem to me that having an understanding of how you want your retirement to be. This isn't what we would ordinarily call planning our retirement, but more what kind of person am I and what brings me fulfillment is a good retirement question. Retirement it also involves a degree of letting go. That is, that Brooks has written an article about retirement, Irene, have a little Google. But critical to retiring is a quality of being able to let go, he teaches. But you are still the same person, and therefore your wiring will suggest that you get fulfillment from the same things. So I guess the question would be, what will I keep alive? If fulfillment comes from keeping things alive, what will I keep alive? How will I do that? Something like that. Yeah. But it is a big change. I mean, this is why I run aging groups. Yeah. Retirement is an enormous change of pace. So yes, earned success and service to others are intrinsic rewards that keep on giving. Yeah. He also adds that we should not get addicted to our work. This possibly more for those who are still in employment rather than not, but we all know people, we all know that the wisdom of nobody is going to say on their deathbed, I wish I'd spent more time in the office. And yet work addiction is a very, very real phenomenon. So the metacognitive ability to assess our work habits, that's important too. And finally, we are not our job. Yeah, this is a particular bugbear of mine, having gone through periods of not being conventionally employed. You go to a party and within, what's your name? What do you do? Yeah, that's not constructive, because what we do is not all of what we are. And that goes for retirement as well, actually. What do I do? I'm retired tells me nothing about, except that you are not employed, in some kind of 9 to 5. We are not our jobs. And I think sometimes that it would be wonderful if wise people would make a practice of asking a different question. Even if it's only, what freeway did you take to bring you here? Or what was a good thing that happened in your day? Or tell me about your favorite thing to, your favorite piece of nature, or whatever it is, anything but what do you do? Rachel, I see a question. Or an observation or a something.
Right. Yeah. Susan had asked in the chat. Oh, I'm sorry, I just lost you. I don't know how that happened. But anyway, Susan asked in the chat, can people be, I think she said approximately, can people be of both types? And if she's referring to intrinsic and extrinsic reward type things, I wanted to add something.
Mhm.
Traditionally, in the literature, intrinsic rewards were elevated as because it's just getting your own sense of self-satisfaction and fulfillment. But when it's linked to motivation, because intrinsic and extrinsic rewards are often coupled with motivation, then they've actually found in later research that people don't people don't usually have just purely intrinsic rewards in mind. I mean, or they don't purely get motivated by intrinsic rewards. It can be the heavier part of their life, but extrinsic rewards are part of the picture too. And I just say that because I don't know if that's what Susan was asking about. But it used to be like you had put it intrinsic versus extrinsic, and I think it's a little bit more of a
It's more
combination.
integrated than that.
Yeah,
Thank
that's
you.
what I was trying to
Thank you.
say, especially as it's connected to motivation.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. And you've outed yourself a little bit there. This is a subject that Rachel knows quite a lot about, just so that you should know that we have such a person in our community. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you. Let me ask Susan, and then I'm keeping an eye on the time, people. We might have to do one giant breakout room. Susan, have at it.
Well, my question was actually about, can people be both a spiral and a garden, or a garden and a ladder, or a spiral and a ladder? In other words, can they be a combination, or have both, more than one side?
I'm sure the answer is yes. And I'm sure that over the course of our lives, there are times where we have been one or the other. I'm sure the answer to that has to be yes. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. I don't want to rush us, but I do. I want us to be able to talk a little bit about faith, and about the way that faith plays into this as a way for us to build what matters. So let me just recap. Family is a pathway to building what matters. Friendship is a pathway to building what matters. Work is a pathway to building what matters, provided that we don't take any of those on their face value. Provided that what I see Brooke saying is that we continue to learn how to family and how to friend and how to work. over the course of our lives. And it's in that how that we expand the possibility for happiness. But the fourth foot is faith. This is Kohelet's wording because, of course, Kohelet writes in the idiom that they write. Yeah, but Kohelet keeps coming back to this. This is the end, but keeps coming back to the sum of the matter. When all is said and done, revere God, observe God's commandments, for this applies to all humankind. And the way that I read this in this context is not everybody should do mitzvot, or indeed everybody should be Jewish, but it's that there needs to be a framework in a person's life for connecting to something greater. Yeah, we need a pathway to something greater. Think about the inverse. Yeah, the that kind of Jean-Paul Sartre hell stuck in the inside of our own heads. Yeah, there needs to be a way of connecting ourselves to something that is greater than ourselves, which may or may not be through religious practice. Yeah, religious and spiritual are not quite the same thing. So briefly, this is, and these are going to be our points for discussion. First point, that we have circuitry in our brain that wants to connect to what is greater than us. Second point, that our minds are not very good at doing that. Those of us who have meditated or have done yoga or whatever it is will have come across this language of the monkey mind. So when we are trying to access faith, when we are trying to connect to what is greater than ourselves, often what gets in the way is distraction, if I can put it under that kind of blanket. And we've all been there. We've all been there. The tendency of our minds to just ping us out of where we're trying to go. Yeah. I'm going to sit and watch the sunset. Okay, because the sunset is beautiful. My foot is itchy. I wonder if I should go and see the doctor about my foot. Oh, wait a minute. Did I make a doctor's appointment last week or did I not? No, I didn't make a doctor's appointment last week because I went out to dinner. And what was it that I ate for? And we're gone. We're gone. We just lost the whole purpose. We're sitting in front of the sunset and we're not seeing it. We're not taking it in. You all know what I mean. I don't want to force the point, but the monkey, finding some way to tame the monkey mind is critical to this fourth pillar, and different people do it in different ways. Yeah, I'm noticing there are two people on this call who are stitching in some way. That's one of the tamers. Yeah, being able to use in some way for creating. It's not just sitting on a meditation cushion. Some people walk, some people run, some people quilt, some people tie themselves into pretzels, some people open a window, some people, it doesn't matter what. It's having the willingness to say, I am going to take the choice to try and get some distance from and openness in and expansiveness in my own thinking. Placing a focus can help. Contemplating a sunset can help. I'm going to come back to the sunset. Focusing on the breath can help. I just spent 5 minutes not conscious that I'm breathing, but I'm breathing. The last verse of the book of Psalms, Kol haneshama tehaleliyah. Every breath praises God. 3,000 years ago, somebody was saying this means that each and every single breath is an opportunity to once again connect to the divine. So it's a constant falling out and falling back in, falling out and falling back in. All of these practices are like that. It's not that we do them perfectly. It's in the doing of them that we begin to find our practice. Does require that we do it consistently. Just like I say to the B'nai Mitzvah kids, 10 minutes a day is much, much better than an hour a week. It's the commitment. And faith and commitment are linked in that way. And again, it doesn't have to be religious. It doesn't have to be Torah study. It doesn't have to be, it is the simple act of coming back to the sunset or the sewing basket or lacing on our shoes or getting on the yoga mat or picking up the guitar or whatever it is. It's the coming back that opens up that possibility. Yeah. I'm just checking the chat. I'm checking the chat. So it is the invitation, if we do not have one, it is the invitation to the finding of a daily practice as a way of building what matters. Yeah. And a little counts for a lot. 10 minutes counts for a lot. Whatever practice like this we begin, we have to build up our muscle to it. It's just like working out. Yeah. But, and this is a bugbear of mine, how am I going to put this politely? I'm not sure that I can. We have outsourced a lot of our spiritual practice in these times in which we live, in which there are big churches and big synagogues and big mosques and so we go to the big church and to the big synagogue and the big mosque, but it doesn't quite land. And the reason for that is that we haven't been building our own receptors. This is not meant to sound punitive, not at all. It's a lot of the time it's not our fault that we didn't build our receptors because nobody told us that we should or needed to. But it's only when you bring a personal, when you're firing on both the personal and the communal, that this piece works. Neither of them will do it, at least Judaism believes, neither of them will do it on their own. You got to have a bit of both. You have what you do outside the room, you have what happens inside the room, then you go back and do the outside the room, then you go back into the room again. And in that shuttling, a practice begins to build. Rachel, you had your hand up. Talk to us.
When I was young, I went to a Torah leadership seminar, and I remember one of the rabbis saying, he said we should do daily prayer. And I said, well, what if I don't really feel inspired or connected to God, or can't it be spontaneous? And he said, well, I'll give you this analogy. He said, think of it like this. He said, if you brush your hair every day, I don't have too much, but if you brush your hair every day, it gets the tangles out. He said, if you leave it unbrushed for several days, it's going to get very tangled. And then he said, it's like untangling the soul. When we pray every day or regularly, I don't want to say every day, this was an Orthodox camp, but when we pray regularly, it untangles our soul. If we let it go too long, our soul gets tangled. So I just thought it was a lovely way to convey it to a child.
I love that analogy. The only way that I would adapt it is that I would substitute practice for prayer.
I'm sorry, that's what I meant, because when you talked about daily practice, I meant daily or regular prayer is what I meant. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. And by the way, it's challenging because we have monkeys in there, right? Many, many monkeys, and they're all swinging around from tree to tree, and they're gibbering and they're poking each other. And it's to require of ourselves that we find that degree of detachment and stillness somehow. Oh, by the way, some people make bread. Bread making is, where did Susan go? Yes, the kneading of challah is, there's a reason that you make challah before Shabbat, right? There's a reason that you do that rhythmic thing. There's a reason that you give part of it away. Yeah, it all makes sense. Yeah. So it's not only praying, it's stitching, it's walking, it's running, it's yoga, it's for some people, adversity itself is the practice. Yeah, there are what you're doing doesn't matter, it's the how of it that is important, but gradually, slowly, drip, 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 it changes us. It changes us, and it's available to us. I do want to keep my promise of popping us into breakout rooms. Are people good to stay until 8:30? Would that be all right? Sarah? We can't hear you.
I'm going.
Yeah.
I was just writing that I was signing off to spend the rest of the evening with my cousin, and that
I
I've gotten a lot out of the
completely
class, and really appreciated getting to know some of you, and look forward to seeing many of you as I saw Raza last at IKAR, and perhaps we'll gather for lunch there sometime.
Lovely.
Thank you all so
Thank
much.
you. Take care. God bless.
Bye.
Are the rest of us up for a little breaking out? I'm going to give us 10 minutes with a little prompt because I think that might be a nice thing to do. Hold on just a moment. Let me share the prompt first so that you can be thinking about it. My prompt is share wisdom about your practice. Yeah, share wisdom about your relationship with faith. Where do you find your grace? Do you have a practice? And how do you stay consistent in that practice if you do have one? And if you don't have one, hopefully there's somebody in the room who does, who will be your teacher. While you're looking at that, I'm going to start creating breakout rooms. See what I got, and making sure that I'm not putting anybody in the room with their parent, their child, or their spouse. Nope, I think we're good.
Or alone.
Or alone. Yeah. No, this should work. If everybody does go into a breakout room, then this will work. Okay. 10 minutes, please. 10 minutes. And I'll see everybody when you're back.
Hello. I can't hear you.
Did I lose you? Let me.
No, what happened was that the person I was set with, we introduced ourselves. She got a phone call and she said she had to leave. So
Oh,
then I tried to get out of the room, but I couldn't. So I got out of the whole.
I see. Let me pop you in. I mean, there's still 5 minutes to go.
Okay.
I'm gonna pop you into a room with Arlene and Susan and just tell them what happened.
Okay, cool.
So
Thank
that
you.
at least you've got a little bit.
All right. Thanks.
You're welcome. everyone. Hello, Irene. Here we go. Here comes everybody back again. Hello, folks. That was too short, wasn't it? I am sorry.
It was just right.
I am sorry. I am sorry, but I did want to make sure that you got one-on-one time with each other. Irene, this is hilarious. It wasn't tonight, I trust. Good.
No, but I was there for so long, I just, I just turned into 4 people.
That
So
is
I
very
took
funny.
selfies of what I had been doing in there.
Very funny. Thank you. All right. So let me summarize. Yeah, because we are at the, I always knew that it was going to be a tall order to do this in 4 sessions. All right. But I hope that if nothing else, I have whetted our appetites for thinking seriously about whether it is possible to be happier or to learn the skill of becoming happier. And this is the summary. So questioning what makes us truly happy is really the starting point. Proceeding on the assumption that what we're being told makes us happy actually makes us happy is the way in, I think. And then the ability to moderate our emotions, to turn outwards to other people so that we are not constantly trapped in the small circle of our own minds. Remembering that we can evolve our imperfect families as part of our enterprise of building what matters. Sustaining lasting friendships as part of the enterprise of building what matters. Work that is love made visible. It's the title of the chapter in the Brooks book, and I've held it back until now. But I think it is just beautiful. It's such a constructive way of thinking about our work, or indeed the way that we walk in the world. I'm going to walk in the world as love made visible. And the benefits of a consistent spiritual practice in small doses, small achievable doses, 10 minutes a day, or a little bit more. Very glad to see people exchanging emails. That is delightful. A coda from Ecclesiastes, and something to think about for Sukkot, which is not as far away as we think it is. Ecclesiastes keeps coming back to joy. Even in the most desperate and most questioning moments, they come back to Simcha, which occurs 17 times in the book of Ecclesiastes. That's more times than in the whole of the Torah.
Wow.
The structure of
That's crazy.
I know.
Oops, sorry.
For this, we thank Rabbi Sachs, Rabbi Jonathan Sachs. The structure of Ecclesiastes, the underpinning of Ecclesiastes is joy. 7 times they interrupt their philosophizing to speak about joy. This is why we read Ecclesiastes, teaches Rabbi Sachs, on Sukkot, because the 7 interruptions of joy correspond to the 7 days of Sukkot. But I suggest that we read it other times as well. An infuriating book, a contradictory book, a book that we often quote selectively from, but it is a wisdom, it's a book that is itself a quest for wisdom. So I hope, if nothing else, we read a little bit more of it than the bits that we already know from the birds, although that to everything There is a season is a very good bit. For further reading, if I've whetted your appetite, here are 2 titles. Most of what Brooks has written extensively on happiness, but this is a good starting book. As you can see, he wrote it with Oprah. And it's a good book. It has a wide reach, and it's a good intro to the rest of his work. If you're an Atlantic subscriber, he's still writing his column on happiness. And if you want more of him in your life, this is a good way of getting it. And the Tao of Solomon, this is Rabbi Rami Shapiro, who is Jewish and very well practiced in Buddhism as well. This is a beautiful translation. Actually, it's more of a version of Ecclesiastes, dealing with the question of if everything is impermanent, how do we find joy? And how do we hold on to joy? And the answer is that we keep trying. We keep pursuing it, and the knowledge that how we do it is important as the what. So happiness is a practice, it's not a destination. And I hope that these sessions have been helpful in encouraging us to look into what happiness is and what might make us happy. Is anybody willing to offer us a closing blessing? Remember, a blessing can be very simple. Joe.
May we all have some memory of what has transpired in the 4 sessions.
Amen. And if you don't, you can find them on the IKAR YouTube channel as a reminder, but that's a lovely blessing. Thank you. May we be blessed and safe. May we be luminous and loved. May we be joyous and whole. And may we remember that we can learn how to pursue happiness. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming.
Yeah, thank you for teaching this.
Thank you.
It's the most valuable gift that you can give, and I'm really grateful. And I will see everybody soon, I trust.
So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so
Thanks
much.
so much. It
Bye
was very
bye.
enjoyable.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
God bless.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
You're
Thank you,
welcome.
Rabbi Silver and everyone. Wonderful class. Thank you.